Hello and welcome into the Sporting Pod. Along with Mauricio Ruiz and Tony Allegretti, I'm Cole Pepper. Today on the pod, the U.S. Open Cup is down to 8 teams. We take a closer look. The field is set for the first season of USL Super League action, as we now know all 8 teams and their logos, as well as the season openers. Action is underway in the USLW League and USL League 2. What it means for Sporting Jacks and the future, we'll hear from Joel Nash, the Senior Vice President of Youth and Pre-Professional with the USL. Want to let you know that, for the first time, we are excited to say, we are fed by the Bearded Pig, locally owned and operated with locations in San Marco and Jacksonville Beach. Make sure you swing by the Bearded Pig for great barbecue and great times.
What did you just call me?
What did I just call you?
The Bearded Pig.
I would never
the disrespect.
I would never call you a pig, Tony. Ever. I would call you bearded.
Yeah.
You do have a beard.
As do I, as some of you may know. By the way, highly recommended barbecue. If you can get there early enough for the burn ends, great. They smoke their own sausage in-house. It's fantastic. Ribs, brisket, chicken, or you name it. It's
there's a reason it's always packed. It's
always
really,
packed.
It's
It
really
really is.
good.
Yeah.
It's really, really good.
Great setting, too, there. All right. Let's start with an invitation to you to join us for our watch parties coming up this Saturday. The Women's Champions League Final, Barcelona against Lyon. Noon at Colhane's Irish Pub in Tinseltown. That'll be a great event for soccer fans of all types. And as Tony pointed out last week, that is right on the heels of the FA Cup Final, Man City and Man U. Then the Champions League watch parties, Real Madrid against Dortmund. Saturday, June the 1st at both Island Wing locations, Southside and Bartram Market, a 3 p.m. kickoff. You can reserve your spots for all of those by going to sportingjacks.com. Also, Copa America will be at Grace Note Brewing for the first 3 matches with the U.S. men's national team, July 23rd, 27th, and July 1st. More information on those coming up as we get closer. All right, you know I love the U.S. Open Cup. Tony loves the U.S. Open Cup.
Yes.
Mauricio loves the U.S. Open Cup. We are down to 8. There are 5 MLS and 3 USL championship teams remaining after the activities from this week. I'll quickly go through them and get your perspective or your takes on any of these. Atlanta United outlasted Charleston Battery. It was 0-0 in stoppage through extra time, and then Charleston jumped out in front on PKs, but the Charleston goalkeeper, Daniel Kuzemka, hobbled in the PKs, and I think that really hurt his opportunity. And Atlanta United wins 5-4 on penalties to advance. Sporting KC with a 4-0 win over FC Tulsa, as expected there, I think. New Mexico United knocked off NYCFC 2 3-0. There was a 55th minute red card that tilted things in New Mexico United's favor. So there's one USL Championship team on to the next round. As is Sacramento Republic, a 4-3 winner over San Jose. 3 goals scored in extra time, including back-to-back in the 106th and 107th minute by Sacramento in a game that probably shouldn't have been that close, but boy, talk about thrilling. And Sacramento Republic gets the win there to advance to the next round.
Well, I watched that game up to 90th minute, and because it was a midnight 90th minute conclusion, West Coast game. But I'll tell you what, Sacramento, their stadium was packed.
Yep.
They were leading that game for a good amount of time, and then San Jose tied. They go to overtime. I'm like looking at how they're substituting, how they're using their depth, how they're using young players. There's a 19-year-old academy player from Sacramento that had not played a league game yet, that had to go in and played all of overtime. Then I wake up the next morning, I'm going 4-3. So what an incredible matchup. And I saw some of the highlights and some of the kind of the crowd reaction. Unbelievable.
Yeah, by the way, I watched a lot of that Charleston Battery Atlanta United game. Same deal there. Packed house in Charleston. It was that's
a heartbreaker to losing PKs of 5-4.
Yeah, and to be fair, the first hour of the game, Charleston definitely had the best of it.
Yeah.
They just couldn't get it going and couldn't find the net. And then Atlanta United just had enough, too much finishing in the PKs. Yesterday, we're recording this on Thursday, so Wednesday's action included Tampa Bay Rowdies falling to FC Dallas 2-1. Tampa Bay had 30 shots, 10 on target, and their only goal was a PK in the 85th minute. Talk about a frustrating
that goalie was just standing on this head. Unbelievable effort there. Anyone that watched that match will tell you that was Tampa Bay's to take, and he just stopped them cold.
Another matchup between MLS and USL Championship. Seattle Sounders, a 2-1 winner over Phoenix Rising. Seattle dominated that one, 24 shots to 8, 7 on target to 2. Both sides scored PKs. Kalani Kosurienza with a winner in the 88th minute for the Sounders. And then an all-USL Championship matchup. Indy 11 dispatches Detroit City 3-0. Indy had 2 shots on target. Both went in, plus an own goal. They only had 33% possession. They win 3-0 somehow.
Classic Sean Dyche ball there.
Well, possession is overrated, right? If you can just score the goals that you shoot, and that's it. You don't really need to worry about all this kind of fancy, sophisticated possession. Just score the goals.
High efficiency.
And an own goal does help.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't
a little
hurt.
bit of luck you take.
So I will ask both of you. Indy 11, Sacramento Republic, New Mexico United. These are the 3 remaining USL Championship teams.
Do we know when the
in
draw
field.
is?
It's after we do this podcast at some point.
Okay.
I think it's next week. Before we see the draw, both of you give me, this is a last longer bet, which of the USL sides will last longer, and will we see a USL Championship team in the finals?
So I would go with New Mexico United. I've enjoyed watching them in the league. They're creeping up. They actually have a game in hand. They're about to claim first place if they can only win this next weekend. I just think that they're flying high, a lot of confidence, and they actually have the attacking power to take down a really well-structured MLS team if that's who they face. Where I think some of the other teams in the USL sometimes, and that's just true to most of the second and third division teams, they're lacking that just a final quality. You look at Tampa Bay Rowdies, right? Mm-hmm. Overshooting, but really lacking that final quality. I actually think that New Mexico United is really well equipped to a USL Cup set.
All right, what's your last longer?
Yeah, I'm saying Sacramento. I think Sacramento Republic. I think with one of the things that I don't know if it's correct or not, but I'm noticing that the USL Championship teams later in the games just don't have quite the same energy. Now that's true of sort of both sides, but I feel like there's more depth in these MLS squads, and I do think that Sacramento can go a little deeper. We'll see. I think it'll be a real upset if any of these championship teams get past these MLS teams right now.
Well, we'll see. I would say I'm with you on Sacramento. I think the last longer. I could see both Sacramento and New Mexico going as far, and then Indy. I just would have to put them in the back seat in terms of who gets further. I don't think they'll get as far, but sometimes when your season isn't going as well as you might like, and you're in a tournament, a mid-season tournament like this, that becomes the focus, and you put all the efforts toward that. And I think all 3 of the USL Championship teams are likely to put a lot into these next U.S. Open Cup matches.
I hope that on the draw they don't get placed against each other. Right, so you don't have like New Mexico
Depends on if
playing against
MLS
Sacramento
or U.S.
right.
Soccer is actually making the draw, right?
Yeah, but then at least one goes to the semis.
True.
That's true.
So
yeah.
I mean,
So
I don't know. I think you're right though. Like a team like Indy, so many things happening in Indy right now. It would make perfect sense for the sort of media soccer world to be on its head because Indy's rolling through the U.S. Open Cup. They did, I should say, too, on their W League team. Just had the first signing for the national team from the W League, from USLW, Hal Hirschfeld. So,
there you go.
Yeah.
All right. We'll get more on that and the W's and 2's here in just a second. Do want to remind you that the Sporting Jacks Report now on the stations of First Coast News. The show debuts every week on Wednesdays at noon on ABC 25. This week, the encore presentation on TLV 12 NBC on Saturday at 12:30. And this week, Mauricio and I examine the USL's pathway to the pros. More on that in just a moment. Also, as we continue to make announcements throughout the course of progress here, we can tell you that the Sporting Jacks Soccer Hour debuts on Monday, June 3rd at 6 o'clock. It's a 1-hour radio show weekly on 1010XL. Mauricio, Becky Burley, and I will have 60 minutes of soccer talk. We'll cover the entire globe with special focus on the USL, the U.S. men's and women's national teams, and probably also the Premier League, which a lot of folks have plenty of interest in. But we are excited to be starting things with 1010XL starting Monday, June the 3rd at 6 p.m.
Is that going to be a call-in program? Are you taking calls? Do we know first time or?
I don't know that we're going to be taking calls. We could take some some tweets. Interaction.
If somebody emailed us questions beforehand, they could do that.
You could do that
I'm going to
well.
throw one in right now. Okay, and that is, I would love to know what Becky, and I think you've talked to her about this before, but like, how exciting is Emma coming in to coach the women's team? Like, I would love to hear her reflections on her.
You should tune in this Saturday at 12 o'clock on
12:30.
Okay, cool. It's like y'all are reading my mind very well. Okay, good.
We might talk about that.
Perfect.
Just a bit.
Yeah.
We will talk more about the U.S. women's national team preparing for their warm-up tournaments before the Olympics, especially. And with Emma Hayes having just won her 5th straight championship in England with the Chelsea women. A lot of changes going on there for the U.S., so we'll get into that. All right, one of the things we started talking about a bit on the Sporting Jacks report last week, and continuing it this week, talking about the sort of development environment in the USL with USL2, USLW. For those who don't know, USL2 is the pre-professional league for boys, young men, and USLW for young ladies and women. Mauricio, in the big picture, this is how you cultivate not only the stars of tomorrow, but also the people who are connected to the game for decades to come.
Yeah, it really is. It's a great product. It's typically run from May through July. And if you don't have a full pro pathway, so not having a pro team at the top, it really serves as a college prep league, right? It's players leave college in May. They have something to do over the summer. But when you connect it to a pro team, this now becomes where we identify and where we store talent, where we attract talents to see if we can play those players at the top level. And because the leagues are running at the same time, especially the USL Championship in this case, you can actually use those players accordingly in training. You can bring them up to games. You can bring reserve players that did not play on the professional side on that weekend, US Open Cup. So there's such a good relationship of having that ultimately under 23 summer team in the USLW or USL2 when you have the full pathway integrated, because then it really becomes more than just a summer team just to kind of get fit for your college team for the fall, but it becomes an opportunity for us to be able to identify players.
You have a question for you. You have a unique perspective on this, having coached Division I for so long. Would you like it when kids would say, "Hey, I'm going home. I'm going to play USL2"? Was that something that you were like encouraged? Is that something that just from a perspective of a college coach? I think about that a lot. You're putting your student athletes in someone else's hands. But how does the college?
Yeah, most college coaches see it differently from one another. I always saw it as we don't provide enough games for kids to play during a college season. So I'm a big proponent of playing games.
Yeah.
But you do need to identify the environments that are going to look after your assets, right?
Yes.
You're going to look after the kids, make sure the development is going to be taken care of, because as many soccer leagues, summer leagues, you're playing 2 games. Some of them you're playing 2 games on a weekend, on a Friday, on a Sunday, sometimes Saturday and Sunday. How are you traveling? What is the temperature like? What is the heat? Is there a roster rotation that are going to keep your players fresh and away from injuries? So we typically try to identify and direct them to environments that they're going to be looked after. But if there are environments that can look after them professionally, the way that we want to look after them, with Sporting Jacks and even at most colleges, then yes, I think players need to train and they need to play.
One of the big storylines, of course, with a USLW or USL2 situation is to see a young player from the area get trained up and develop up through that system and wind up playing for the pro team in their hometown. It's unlike any other sport. I mean, you could have an NBA team that has, if you're the New York Knicks and you have some kid who grows up in the Bronx and goes to St. John's, well, you sort of have that, but it's got to be very specific, and that's specific to a particular geography.
Yeah, and it's just luck of the draw on the draft.
Yeah, and to have Rasheed Mathis, from Jacksonville go to Bethune-Cookman and play for the Jaguars. Okay, you have that to some extent. But this is an entirely different setup, and I think creates some amazing stories in potential to see what could happen, down the road for our first rosters.
Yeah, super exciting too. Like, I mean, you can really. There's things I'm thinking about this, and we're working so hard on the real estate. And we've got so many things just left to do and knock out. But one of the things that I just really love is that there's canned goods in my pantry right now that I know will be playing soccer before they go wrong. And if you've got a kid that's 15, 16 years old, there's a chance that they'll be playing professional soccer in your hometown
Before Tony opens up his can of corn.
Yeah, corn, there's beans,
lima beans,
lima
different things.
Yeah, exactly. There's lots
preserves,
of lots of
things that can happen. I'm going to go ahead and just let you unpack that analogy, Mauricio. But the point being that to have a kid who grew up in our area, starring in high school club situation, to play in a USL2, USLW, and then in a few years' time could be wearing the crest on their shirt.
Well, it just makes sense from a business standpoint as well for a club that doesn't need to continue to buy players, right? If you develop your own players, and if you have 3 to 4 players in a period of a 3 to 4 year average, you have 5 players in a period that are coming from within the club, then you're not just a buying club. You actually have your developing club. You can eventually be a selling club as the USL brand continues to get bigger internationally, as we've seen recently. So it just makes tons of sense. Now, I mean, everything you've mentioned, Cole, from a local, support and fans coming, supporting the local kid, I think, that's the dream. That's unbelievable. And I think we should all be striving to do that and put in a really high focus on the developmental side of our youth clubs here. Not just one club, but like we should be encouraged to work with all of the local entities so they can develop that talent that can eventually play for the first team. So then the technical staff on the first team are using some of these properties, the USL2, the USL Academy, the Under-20 League, so in all the other leagues, to identify talent that can play for the first team. They can sign a junior level contract, if you would, right, like an academy-based contract to get their first taste and their first foot into the door. And if they perform well, their second contract is substantial. And if they can be sold to further leagues and advance their career, then it just makes sense financially for everybody.
I spoke with Joel Nash, the Senior Vice President for Youth and Pre-Professional for the USL this week. We'll play more of this interview coming up on the Sporting Jacks Report and the Sporting Jacks Soccer Hour in coming weeks. But one of the things I thought was an interesting response, I asked him to do a bit of a SWOT analysis, at least the O and the T, the opportunities and the threats, about what for USL2 and USLW, what the opportunities are and what the threats are. And he said kind of in some regard, it's just one altogether, kind of both an O and a T as far as this is concerned when you talk about soccer in America.
I believe that the opportunity and threat, or however we really want to define it for this topic, kind of lies in the same realm, which many times might happen in a SWOT analysis, so to speak. We truly believe our biggest strength as a country is our size, but when it comes to the day-to-day, that also can become a whether it's a threat or a weakness in some ways, because how we actually go out and put systems in place to identify the talent, no matter what background, whether it be socioeconomic, geographic location. We want players to understand that if they have a passion and they're growing, there is an organization, there's an opportunity for them as close to home as possible. And so that is why we're so focused on the infrastructure side. And then when you pair that with the right memberships of organizations that come into USL, that's how we feel we're able to carry out taking the biggest opportunity size of our country and not having so many, we'll call them kind of empty areas or empty zones that players aren't feeling or given the right opportunity, that if they excel as a player, they're going to be given that opportunity. And that all starts with the organizations coming into town and starting from scratch that we obviously are excited to watch.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like our soccer media day that we are now doing annually is a great look. So we've already got hundreds of interviews with shout out World Class for holding the camera and Morgan for taking great photos. But there are student athletes in those media days that will go on and play pro soccer. And so having that year after year is going to just be a huge benefit for us just to garner that at that early age.
Well, I mean, I think that's the dream. I think that's when we get an opportunity to get in front of folks, that's exactly it, right? Whether it's you in your dungeon with your canned goods and having that timeline as a really weird kind of perspective, but it does make sense.
I have a window.
You do? I just kept picturing
one of your nicer dungeons.
Yeah.
I kept picturing like Brendan Fraser from Blast from the Past, like that movie where they go, you just with a bunch of stuff down there. And just waiting for soccer to get started here in Jacksonville, just waiting to come up from the elevator.
I'm going to Google that just to make sure that that's not a complete insult.
No, Christopher Walken was in it.
Christopher Walken, yeah, it's a great movie.
Never mind.
You never seen it?
No,
it's a great movie. Okay, go see that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in the next podcast. But absolutely. I think that's a dream. That there are kids currently right now, 14, and up, that by the time we kick off in 2026, it's not unrealistic that a 17-year-old, even a 16-year-old, if we identify that they can play and they can kind of give minutes, they'll for sure be in our ecosystem training. They'll be able to have visibility and access to our first team level players, boys and girls. And I would suggest, I'm so bold to say that may happen on the girls' side before it happened on the boys' side here in the city. Just because our talent on the girls' side, for whatever reason, it's just been more at a higher level comparatively to a national landscape.
All right. We usually try to aim for around 20-ish minutes for the podcast, but there is so much happening this week in the USL environment that we're going to go a little longer here. So bear with us, and I think you're going to like some of the topics we have coming up here, specifically with the USL Super League. The news this week just came fast and furious. The final USL Super League team for the inaugural season now has a brand, DC Power FC. The club has also announced the hiring of Frederic Brillant, 38-year-old, as the first head coach in club history. They've also appointed local business leader Jordan Stewart as the first club president. Brillant is a French former footballer, recently an assistant for Utah Royals, an expansion team in the NWSL, hired away before their season started, and then previously an assistant with DC United, so in the DC area, certainly well there. Played for NYCFC and DC United, 153 games in MLS. And then Jordan Stewart has a minority stake in Loudoun United, which is connected with DC Power FC. And then the other big news, Angel Reese, who, if Caitlin Clark never existed, would be Caitlin Clark. She one of the two big stars of women's basketball, now a rookie, has joined the ownership of DC Power. So that's all come this week. So here are the 8 brands that will be playing in the USL Super League: Brooklyn FC, Carolina Ascent, Dallas Trinity, Fort Lauderdale United, Lexington SC, Spokane Zephyr, and Tampa Bay Sun. Some player signings this week, including Spokane signing midfielder Taylor Aylmer, who won an NWSL championship while with the Washington Spirit. Also played in the Premier Finnish Women's League. Fort Lauderdale United signed Nova Southeastern alum and Brazilian forward Mauricio, hat tip, Luana Gravius to their lineup. And the late information that just came in within 24 hours of us recording this, the USL Super League home openers were all announced. Whew. All right.
Yeah.
Somebody help me catch my breath here. The first 2 games will be on August the 17th. Spokane Zephyr against Fort Lauderdale United in Spokane. So in August in the Northwest, that'll be beautiful. Carolina Ascent will host DC Power FC on August the 17th at American Legion Memorial Stadium in Charlotte. And then the following day on Sunday, Tampa Bay Sun will host Dallas Trinity.
Road trip.
Yeah, we're going.
Maybe. I mean, I'm looking at it. Possibly a road trip right there. Brooklyn opens their home schedule August the 31st against Carolina. And then on September 7th, it's Dallas against DC in the Cotton Bowl, by the way. Lexington SC will have their home opener against Tampa Bay. So they'll have several weeks of road games. On September the 8th will be the Lexington opener. DC Power's opener against Fort Lauderdale, September the 13th at Audi Field. And Fort Lauderdale will be the last team in the USL Super League to open at home, September the 29th at Nova Southeastern for that one. Takeaways from either one of you, because I need to catch my breath after going through all that USL Super League news.
I mean, my main thing is I want to get down to Tampa Bay and watch it. I think it would be so cool to be there for opening weekend, brand new professional league, Division I. I really hope Tampa Bay, or I hope every city shows out and really supports their women. So I'm just kind of stoked that it's all really coming together, and it's kind of goosebumps because we know all these teams, we know all these owners and operators, and just it's amazing to see something come out of the ground.
Well, if you are into women's soccer, or if you want to get into women's soccer, that is the biggest growth in soccer in this country right now from a professional standpoint, right? We're going to focus a lot on the national teams this summer with, Copa being here for the Copa America, being here for the first time, and then you have the Olympics, so we have big expectations for our women, and our men are playing in the Olympics as well. But from a change of guard, or just from a natural growth standpoint, women's soccer nearly doubling the opportunity for young ladies to play in more backyards than ever before. Really, all of these outside of DC are brand new soccer women's cities in a way, right? If you can, I'm not trying to label it like that, but you know what I mean. So if you you say you just ran through a lot of what's happening, it's going to continue to happen from this point on. I'll just watch. I was looking at the Fort Lauderdale Strikers social media this morning. They're walking through their new stadium construction, everything that's happened over now in Nova Southeastern University. Tampa Bay is doing a little bit of the same. So if you're into women's soccer and that's a passion that you have and you just don't know what the access is, look at all these new team brands. They're going to be doing a lot to get out to the community and really to the bigger community. It's going to be an exciting time to see how clubs come from dust all the way up to a full-fledged organization.
We haven't organized anything yet, but if you are interested in going down with us to Tampa Bay to watch the inaugural kickoff, let us know via email, thesportingpod@sportingjacks.com, and we'll make sure that you get information as we put it together. It's organic right now, but we think that'll be a fun thing to do.
Love that idea. That's great. Also, while you're doing that, be sure to pop over to sportingjacks.com and become a member of Sporting Jacks. It's absolutely free. You get discounts on Sporting Jacks merchandise, invitations to exclusive insider events, chances to win special prizes and experiences, and you'll receive the Sporting Jacks monthly email newsletter, sometimes more than monthly. And you can place your deposit on season tickets and receive first access to seats and a special limited edition Sporting Jacks founding member pin. Just go to sportingjacks.com. Finally, as we approach the half-hour mark here, as we mentioned before, the Premier League is bringing Wolves and West Ham to Jacksonville on July the 27th to compete in the Stateside Cup. Tickets are now on sale, keep your ears and eyes peeled to our social media and digital and broadcast properties, because we'll have some great, exciting opportunities for fans to experience Premier League soccer here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and you can increase your chances of taking part in that by coming to our robust watch party schedule.
Or schedule. Should you prefer?
Should you all?
Well, remember, I know West Ham had a bit of a downish year this year, but they were playing in Europa League conference last year. They beat Fiorentina in the final. That's a team that only a year ago Declan Rice was playing for, and now they got Lucas Paquetá, if he's not a Man City player by then. So I mean, it's just a really high level football.
I always wanted Everton to pick up Antonio so I could get the jersey.
Just put Antonio.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna.
Antonio Valencia. Well, maybe you can kind of get behind the scenes and get an Antonio jersey.
Yeah.
I know a guy who knows a guy.
I'll never wear a West Ham jersey. But on that note, did they keep Moisey yet, or has he been released?
No,
he's gone.
Yeah.
Right. So, new coach coming to Jacksonville. Then whomever is.
Look up Teggy.
And then I let bring up world class one more time, and I did notice that there's only 2 more Chelsea managers until Christmas. So.
That's a little rib. All right, I think that'll do it for us for today. Boy, we had a lot to get to, and as Mauricio mentioned, going to be a lot in the future. We're going to have a lot to talk about on the Sporting Jacks Soccer Hour starting June the 3rd on 1010XL and on the Sporting Jacks Report on First Coast News, debuting every Wednesday at noon on ABC 25. For Mauricio Ruiz and Tony Allegretti, or simply Antonio, I'm Cole Pepper. Thanks for listening to the Sporting Pod.